Hey guys, today we're diving into one of my guilty pleasure topics. Those moments when a spoiled kid finally gets a well-deserved reality check. You know the type? The kids who think they're the main character of every room they walk into, convinced the world revolves around them, till one day it doesn't. We've all witnessed it. Maybe at a store, in a classroom, at a birthday party. Maybe it was your cousin, your neighbor's kid, or even your own younger self. And when it happens, well, it's a strange mix of satisfaction, secondhand embarrassment, and sometimes a little justice. So today, I'm sharing 10 of my own stories, moments I personally experienced, of spoiled kids getting owned. Some are hilarious, some are awkward, and some are just pure karma in action. Before we get started, tell me where you're watching from down in the comments. If you've got your own spoiled kid gets owned story, share it. Maybe it'll make it into a future video. Alright, let's get into it. I was about 15 when my mom volunteered me to help out at a little girl's birthday party down the street. I put help out in quotes because what she actually meant was be unpaid. Child wrangler for 3 hours while trying not to lose your sanity. The birthday girl, let's call her Mia, had just turned 8. I didn't know her that well, but I'd seen her in passing around the neighborhood. She was always dressed in those brand-name glittery outfits, the kind that looked like they were designed by someone who just chugged 3 energy drinks. Her hair was always done up with sparkly bows. Her sneakers were the kind that light up when you walk. And she had this air about her like she was starring in her own Disney Channel show. And we were all background extras. When I arrived, the backyard had been transformed into what can only be described as a unicorn-themed explosion. Balloons everywhere. A giant inflatable slide. Tables with pastel tablecloths. Cupcakes with edible glitter. Honestly, it was kind of magical, but also overwhelming. Mia spotted me from across the yard and yelled, You're in charge of making sure no one touches my stuff." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She marched up, hands on hips, and started giving me a list of rules, and I wish I was making this up. No one was allowed to sit in her chair. No one was allowed to touch her balloons. No one was allowed to play with the new dollhouse yet, because she hadn't broken it in. Everyone had to sing happy birthday exactly twice, once before cake and once after, because she liked the attention. I just nodded along because, hey, it's her party, right? But within 10 minutes, the rules turned into constant orders.
"Get me a pink cup. That piece of cake is too small. Open this for me, I'm tired."
Her parents didn't really step in. Just kind of laughed it off like, oh, you know how kids are. But I've been around kids. And this wasn't just normal kid behavior. This was tiny dictator behavior. The real turning point came during present time. Mia sat in a little folding chair in the middle of the patio, surrounded by a mountain of brightly wrapped boxes. The other kids sat on the grass, excited to see what she'd gotten. The first few gifts were big hits: a Barbie Dreamhouse accessory set, a giant stuffed unicorn, a karaoke machine. She'd rip off the paper, squeal, hold it up for everyone to see. But then, she opened a small box from one of the quieter girls in her class. Inside was a handmade necklace. Colorful beads strung together, with a little heart charm in the middle. You could tell a kid had made it with love. Mia held it up, looked at it for about 2 seconds, and then, in the flattest voice possible, said, "Ugh. Cheap." The entire yard went silent. I could feel my stomach drop. The girl who'd made it looked like she'd just been slapped. Her mom leaned forward like she was about to intervene, but before she could, an unexpected hero emerged. Mia's grandmother. Now I'd seen her earlier. This tiny woman with silver hair pulled back in a perfect bun, wearing a floral dress and orthopedic sandals. She'd been quietly sitting in the shade, sipping iced tea and watching everything unfold. She hadn't said much all afternoon. But the second those words left Mia's mouth, she stood up. In one smooth motion, she walked over, took the necklace from Mia's hands, and slipped it into her own purse. Then she crouched down so she was eye level with her granddaughter and said, in a voice so calm it was terrifying, "If you don't appreciate it, you don't get to keep it." Mia's eyes went wide. But no buts. Say thank you, or the rest of these presents are going in the donation box. I swear I saw the color drain from Mia's face. She glanced at the mountain of unopened gifts, then at her grandmother, and finally muttered, "Thank you." Louder, her grandmother said. "Thank you," Mia repeated, louder this time. Grandmother smiled, patted her on the head, and went back to her chair like nothing had happened. The rest of the party, Mia was noticeably subdued. She still gave orders here and there, but there was a little more please and thank you sprinkled in. I think she realized, at least for that day, she wasn't untouchable. Later, when I was helping clean up, the girl who'd made the necklace came up to me. She whispered, "I can make you one if you want." I told her I'd love that. She smiled so wide it almost erased the earlier awkwardness. Walking home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It wasn't just that Mia got owned, it was who did it. Sometimes it's not the loudest person in the room who changes the vibe. It's the quiet one who's been watching the whole time, waiting for the right moment. That was the first time I saw a spoiled kid get taken down a peg by family. Not every reality check comes from someone who knows you. Sometimes it's a complete stranger, and those moments can be unforgettable. You know those moments in public where something loud catches your attention, and you tell yourself, don't get involved? Just keep walking, but your curiosity wins anyway. That's exactly how this story starts. I was doing a quick grocery run on a Saturday morning. The kind where you tell yourself you're just grabbing a few things, and then somehow end up with a cart so full you need a degree in engineering to fit it all on the conveyor belt. I had my list in one hand, my reusable bag in the other, and I was on autopilot, until I turned into the cereal aisle. Now, the cereal aisle on a Saturday is already chaos. Kids darting around, parents half arguing about which box to get. The occasional person just standing there blankly staring at the shelves like they're calculating the meaning of life. But this time, the chaos had a focal point, and it was coming from about halfway down the aisle. At first, I thought a fire alarm had gone off. Then I realized, no, that was a child. This boy, maybe 10 years old, with messy blonde hair and an oversized hoodie, was screaming. Not crying, not whining, screaming. The kind of high-pitched, guttural sound that makes you check your phone to see if there's been an Amber Alert. I slowed my cart and pretended to study the fiber cereals, but really, I was listening. His mom was trying to calm him down, her voice low, but clearly strained. "We have cereal at home," she said. "We're not buying another box." Apparently this was the wrong answer. The kid stomped his foot so hard the shelf behind him rattled. "I want this one," he yelled, pointing at a box of rainbow-colored marshmallow puffs. His mom sighed. "We have cereal. You can choose from what's at home." "I don't want what's at home," he shrieked. "I want this one, and you can't tell me no." Now normally, this is where you'd expect the parent to either give in to avoid a scene or lay down the law. But before she could do either, the kid delivered the nuclear line. "My daddy will sue you." Let me just pause here and say, sue who exactly? The store? His mom? The cereal company? The concept of breakfast itself? There was a beat of silence as his mom stared at him, probably wondering the same thing. That's when I heard a new voice. It's an older man, maybe late 60s, wearing a baseball cap and pushing a half-full cart, had been walking past. Without breaking stride, without even looking directly at the kid, he said loud enough for half the aisle to hear, "Kid, if I talked to my mother like that when I was your age, I'd be picking myself up off the floor." The way he said it. Not angry, not threatening, just a plain statement of fact. Made the whole aisle go still. The boy froze mid-tantrum. His mouth was open, but no sound came out. It was like someone had hit the mute button. His mom's face did this subtle thing, half trying not to laugh, half relieved that someone else had said what she couldn't. She looked at the older man and gave the tiniest nod. It's like, "Thanks, stranger." And then, in a tone so calm it was almost a little scary, she said, "Well, you heard the man." She put the cereal back on the shelf and started pushing her cart toward the other end of the aisle. The boy followed. No screaming, no foot stomping, just muttering under his breath, glancing at me like I might be about to say something next. The older man, he didn't even slow down. Just moved on to the pasta aisle like he hadn't just delivered one of the most satisfying mic drops I'd ever witnessed. I ended up behind them in the checkout line later, and the kid was quiet the whole time. No more demands, no more lawsuits threatened. Just standing there, occasionally looking up at his mom like he was still processing what happened. As I walked to my car, I couldn't stop thinking about how sometimes a reality check doesn't need to come from someone you know. In fact, maybe it's more effective coming from a stranger, because it's so unexpected. That man didn't have to stop. He didn't have to say anything. But by doing so, He cut right through all the noise, literally and figuratively. It made me think back to when I was a kid. If an adult I didn't know had ever called me out like that in public, I would have been mortified. And maybe, just maybe, that embarrassment sticks with you enough to change how you act next time. But while a stranger's words can leave a lasting mark, sometimes the owning doesn't come from a dramatic call-out at all. Sometimes it's the slow, inevitable unraveling of a spoiled kid's story until the truth finally comes out. It's worse than they ever expected. I was in 8th grade when my class went on a field trip to the local science museum. This place was like Disneyland for nerds. Planetarium shows, dinosaur skeletons, interactive exhibits where you could push buttons and make stuff light up. For a middle schooler, it was basically a full day out of the classroom, where no one was breathing down your neck about homework. Now, field trips in my school always had the same basic rules. Stay with your group. Don't touch anything you're not supposed to. And for the love of all things holy, don't embarrass the school. Most of us followed these rules without a problem. But there was one kid, let's call him Connor, who treated rules like they were personal insults. Connor was the kind of kid who bragged about how much money his parents made, always had the newest iPhone, and liked to tell teachers. My dad's a lawyer. Whenever he got in trouble, didn't really have friends so much as an audience. Kids who hung around him because he'd bought snacks for everyone or because it was kind of entertaining to watch him push boundaries. From the moment we got off the bus, Connor was in rare form. He ran ahead of the group, tried to climb on the dinosaur displays, and loudly announced which exhibits were boring, before anyone else even had a chance to look. Our chaperone, Mrs. Alvarez, had already told him twice to knock it off. Things really escalated when we got to the gem and mineral section. This room had glass cases full of sparkling stones, rare fossils, and a huge amethyst geode right in the center on a velvet-lined stand. The sign clearly said "Do not touch," but Connor read it out loud in a mocking tone, and then, without hesitation, reached out to knock on the geode like it was a front door. Mrs. Alvarez swooped in immediately. "Hands off, Connor," she snapped. But Connor just smirked. "Relax. It's not like it's gonna break. My dad could buy this whole thing if he wanted." That's when one of the museum staff, a tall guy in a navy vest with a name tag that said Elliot, appeared out of nowhere. You could tell he'd been watching for a while. In this calm, measured voice, he said, "Sir, if you can't follow the rules, I'll have to ask you to leave the exhibit." Connor actually laughed. "You can't make me leave. This is a public place." Elliot didn't blink. "Actually, it's not. This is a private museum, and right now you're a guest. Guests who damage property or disturb others can be removed." Connor rolled his eyes. "Yeah, well, my dad's and Elliot cut him off with a lawyer. Then I'm sure he'll understand that you signed a behavior agreement before entering, and that your school signed on your behalf as well." The color drained from Connor's face. The chaperones were trying not to smile. Elliot gestured toward the exit and said, "If you'd like, I can call security now. Or you can rejoin your group and keep your hands to yourself. Your choice." Connor mumbled something like "fine" and slouched back toward us. For the rest of the trip, he didn't so much as look at another display the wrong way. The other kids noticed too. A few even whispered, "Guess the lawyer card didn't work this time." The best part? On the bus ride home, Mrs. Alvarez leaned over and said quietly, "You know, I think you just learned there's a whole world out there that doesn't care who your dad is." And she was right. There's something uniquely satisfying about watching a kid realize that the rules apply to them, no matter how many times they've gotten away with ignoring them before. Of course, sometimes a spoiled kid's undoing isn't about breaking the rules. It's about thinking they've already won, right before they lose in the most embarrassing way possible. In 6th grade, my school held an annual spring talent showcase. It wasn't really a competition, more of an open mic where kids could sing, dance, juggle, tell jokes, whatever they felt like.
Most kids used it as an excuse to get out of class for an afternoon, but a few took it very seriously.
One of those kids was Brittany. Brittany was in my homeroom, and she had the kind of confidence that made you wonder if she'd been told she was a star since birth. She was always wearing sparkly headbands, talking about her dance recitals, and telling anyone who would listen that she was basically going to be famous. When sign-ups for the talent show opened, Brittany immediately put her name down for a solo dance performance. She wouldn't tell anyone what song she was using. She said it was top secret, because she didn't want anyone to steal her vibe. For weeks, she strutted around dropping hints about how amazing her routine was going to be. She even told one kid who was planning to sing, "You probably shouldn't bother. You don't want to follow me." The day of the show arrived, and Brittany came out wearing this glittery leotard with fringe that swayed when she moved. The music started, and it was one of those over-the-top pop songs that's basically just a wall of sound. She launched into her routine, twirling and doing these big, dramatic arm movements. Except here's the thing. Brittany wasn't actually that good. She kept losing her place in the music, and some of her moves looked like she'd just made them up on the spot. But you could tell she thought she was nailing it. Halfway through, disaster struck. One of her fringe pieces got caught on the edge of the stage prop, and she stumbled.
Ow.
She tried to play it off, but then the music skipped. Literally skipped, like the old CD player glitched, and she froze. From the audience, there was this awkward pause, and then, from backstage, a younger kid, maybe 4th grade, came out holding a jump rope. She started skipping in perfect time to the beat, totally improvising, and the crowd started clapping along. It was like she had stolen the spotlight without even trying. Brittany finished her routine, but the applause was polite. When the jump rope girl finished, the place went wild. Later in the hallway, Brittany was fuming. She said the whole thing was unfair, and that people just like little kids more. But the truth was, she had gone in expecting everyone to automatically love her performance, because she thought she was the star, and then learned that talent, effort, and humility actually matter. It was one of the rare times I saw her completely deflated, and maybe, just maybe, it was the start of her realizing that being the center of attention isn't the same as being the best. Transition to next story. Sometimes it's a single moment that takes the wind out of a spoiled kid's sails, but other times, it's a long, slow burn, and the owning happens right when they least expect it, like during what's supposed to be a fun family vacation. A few summers back, my extended family decided to do this big group vacation, like 3 generations of cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents all renting cabins at the same lakeside resort. It was one of those sounds fun in theory ideas that turns into a logistical nightmare when you realize just how many different personalities you've thrown into one place. Now, my cousin Amanda, she's my age, had recently married a guy who had a 10-year-old son from a previous relationship. Let's call him Tyler. This was my first time meeting Tyler, but I'd heard stories. Tyler, as Amanda's husband described him, was spirited. But from what I gathered, spirited meant has never been told no. He had the latest video game console, the fanciest bike, his own iPad, and a clothing brand rotation that could rival a teen influencer's. And apparently, his mom back home was the same way. If Tyler wanted it, Tyler got it. Amanda tried to explain that we'd be swimming, fishing, hiking, and playing games together. Ain't Tyler groaned like she'd suggested we all spend the week doing math homework. The first couple of days, he sulked through everything. On the boat, he complained that the life jacket smelled weird. At the campfire, said marshmallows were gross unless they were perfectly golden, which no one could apparently achieve to his standards. But the breaking point came on Tuesday morning. We were doing a group hike up to this scenic overlook that everyone had raved about. It was about 1.5 miles up a moderately steep trail. Nothing crazy, but enough to get your heart pumping. Tyler decided about 10 minutes in that it was too hot and too hard, and started demanding someone carry him. Amanda told him no. Her husband told him no. My uncle, who was built like a retired linebacker, told him no. But Tyler was used to winning these battles. Plopped down in the dirt, crossed his arms, and said, "Fine, I'm not going. I'll just wait here." The thing about this trail, though, is that it loops. Go up one way and come down another. Which meant if Tyler stayed there, he'd be alone for over an hour. That's when Amanda's husband said, "All right, buddy, you can wait here if you want. But if you're not at the cabin when we get back, you'll have to figure out dinner for yourself." Tyler blinked. You could see the mental math happening. Finally, he got up, muttering something about how this is stupid. We made it to the top, and wow, it was worth it. The lake stretched out below us, the mountains rising in the distance. the kind of view you see on postcards. Everyone was taking pictures, soaking it in. Everyone except Tyler, who sat on a rock, scrolling aimlessly through the offline games on his iPad. On the way down, something shifted. Tyler started walking faster, asking questions about the trail, even pointing out a squirrel he saw. I figured maybe the exercise had burned off some of his attitude. But when we got back to the cabin, I overheard him telling his dad I didn't think I could do it, but I guess I did. It wasn't a big dramatic turnaround, but there was a flicker of pride in his voice. The rest of the week, he complained a little less. He even joined in a late-night card game without being begged. And on the last day, he asked if we could do another hike before leaving. It was one of those moments that reminded me, sometimes a spoiled kid isn't owned. When I was around 17, I got invited to this little kid's birthday party because my mom was friends with his aunt. The kid was about 8, and everyone kept warning me he's a lot, which usually means brace yourself. The moment I walked in, this kid was already mid-tantrum because his cake didn't have the right number of sprinkles. Not kidding. You'd think someone had set the cake on fire the way he was screaming. His parents were running around apologizing to guests like they were the victims, saying things like, "He's just very passionate." Anyway, the big drama happened when present time rolled around. Everyone sat in a circle to watch him open gifts, and I swear he had the fastest judgmental expressions I've ever seen on a child's face. He'd tear off wrapping paper, look at the gift, and then either toss it aside or light up if it was good enough. But then, his uncle gave him an envelope. The kid opened it, saw it was a card with a $20 bill inside, and threw it on the floor. He actually yelled, "I wanted a drone, not paper money." The room went dead silent. His uncle, who, by the way, is a no-nonsense military guide, just looked at him and said, "Pick it up." The kid crossed his arms and said no. What happened next was like watching a nature documentary where the alpha wolf asserts dominance. His uncle calmly walked over, picked up the money, and handed it to the birthday kid's older sister. "You know what? You can have this instead. I bet you'll find something nice with it." The little sister looked shocked but thrilled, and the 8-year-old absolutely lost his mind. Full meltdown. And you know what the parents did? For once they didn't defend him. They actually made him apologize to his uncle and sister in front of everyone. The party kept going, but that was the first time I'd ever seen this kid not get his way, and it was glorious. It made me realize sometimes it's not about yelling or punishment, it's about showing a kid that actions have consequences immediately. And speaking of getting consequences immediately, I once got roped into a family vacation with my friend's family when I was 19. They told me all I had to pay for was my flight, and everything else would be covered. Sounded like a dream, right? Free food, beach resort, sunshine. Yeah, I should have known better. The first sign of trouble was at the airport. We're standing at the check-in counter, and my friend's little brother, who was about 12 at the time, was demanding that he get his own first-class ticket. Keep in mind, the rest of us were flying economy. He starts screaming at the airline staff about how Daddy always books me first class. His dad looked at the ticket agent like he was the problem. They actually paid to upgrade him. It's just him. The 12-year-old got to board early and sit alone in first class, while the rest of us were crammed in the back row by the bathroom. When we landed, it only got worse. The hotel had booked 2 adjoining rooms, one for the parents and one for us kids. But the little brother threw a fit that he didn't want to share a bed with anyone, so they gave him the entire second room to himself, while the rest of us 3 grown teenagers had to pile into the parents' room and share one bed and a pull-out couch. Then there was the food situation. Every meal turned into a hostage situation because he'd demand something ridiculously specific, like pancakes, shaped like dinosaurs, and, if the restaurant didn't have it, he'd throw utensils on the floor and sulk until the parents ordered room service just for him. We were all too embarrassed to be seen with them by the second day. The final straw for me was on the last night. We went to a nice seafood place and he ordered lobster. When it arrived, he took one bite and said it was too fishy. He threw the entire lobster literally hurled a taunt to the floor. The whole restaurant went silent. I just remember sitting there, staring at the claw meat sliding across the tile, thinking, I spent $600 on a plane ticket for this. When we got home, I politely declined every single future invitation from that family. Some vacations are relaxing. That one just made me want another vacation to recover from it. And funny enough, My next story is about someone who definitely needed recovery after dealing with a spoiled kid. When I was working part-time at a bakery in college, I got assigned to help deliver a cake for a little girl's 7th birthday party. The mom came in the week before and ordered the most over-the-top cake I'd ever seen for tiers: edible glitter, sugar roses, fondant figurines, the works. The bill came to almost $600. On delivery day, I show up to this massive backyard party. There's a bouncy castle, pony rides, a cotton candy machine, basically a mini carnival. I carry the cake inside, set it on the decorated table, and the mom beams at me like I just handed her the crown jewels. Then the birthday girl comes in. She takes one look at the cake and immediately bursts into tears. I mean screaming tears. She starts shouting, "It's the wrong shade of pink. I wanted ballerina pink, not bubblegum pink." At first I thought she was joking. Nope. She smacked the side of the cake with her little hand, leaving a giant dent in the frosting, and yelled, "I'm not eating this." The room went dead silent, except for her sobbing. The mom rushes over to comfort her and actually turns to me and says, "Can you fix it? Lady, we are not repainting a house here." I tried smoothing the frosting, but it was fondant once it's dented. It's dented. The mom looked stressed. The dad looked like he wanted to evaporate. And the kids stormed out to the bouncy castle in dramatic despair. The kicker? After I left, the mom called the bakery demanding a refund because her daughter didn't like the cake. My boss told her no, obviously. But she left us a 1-star review online that said, "Ruined my daughter's special day." Yeah, not the sugar crash, not the dented cake, not the small army of screaming children. Apparently I was the problem. And if you think that's bad, wait until you hear about the kid I babysat who made this girl seem like an angel in comparison. Back when I was 16, I took a babysitting job for a family that had just moved into the neighborhood. The parents were nice, but clearly overwhelmed, work trips, busy schedules, the usual. They had a 6-year-old boy named Jake, who, on paper, seemed sweet enough. I arrived right after school, and the mom gave me a quick rundown. Jake's a bit ... particular. Likes his snacks just so. And he does have a temper if things don't go his way. Gay. But he's good with games and stories. Sounds manageable, right? Well, about 20 minutes in, Jake threw the first tantrum. I had given him the snack he usually liked, goldfish crackers, but he suddenly decided they were wrong colors. He demanded orange ones only. I tried to explain the bag was mixed, but he crossed his arms and refused to eat. No big deal, I thought. Kids are kids. Then came the video game meltdown. He wanted to play a certain game but wouldn't listen to the rules. He threw the controller at the TV. At this point, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm in over my head. Then dinner time. I made him grilled cheese sandwiches just like his mom asked. But Jake decided he wanted to eat it upside down, so when I flipped it right side up, he screamed through the plate and ran to his room. The real chaos happened later. Jake was supposed to be in bed by 8 p.m. Instead, I heard him stomping around, throwing toys, yelling about how no one listens to me. He even locked himself in the bathroom for a bit. I was honestly on the verge of calling his parents to come home early. But here's the kicker: right before bedtime, I tried one last thing. I asked Jake to help me pick out a bedtime story. He reluctantly agreed, and we ended up reading a book about a pirate who learns to share and listen. Halfway through, Jake stopped crying and actually laughed. I swear that book was a game changer. By the time his parents got home, Jake was asleep peacefully. Parents thanked me profusely and said, "He's like that sometimes. We're working on it." That night, I realized some spoiled kids aren't spoiled just because they want stuff. They're frustrated because they don't know how to express themselves or get attention in healthy ways. But man, babysitting Jake was like trying to tame a hurricane in a teacup. If babysitting felt like a storm, my next story was more like a slow, creeping fog of entitlement, and it ended in one of the most satisfying public call-outs I've ever witnessed. One chilly autumn afternoon, I ducked into a small local coffee shop to grab a latte before heading to class. The place was cozy, exposed brick walls, indie music humming in the background, and the kind of baristas who knew your order after the first visit. As I waited in line, I noticed a kid around 13 or 14 sitting in the corner with his parents. He was dressed head-to-toe in designer clothes, the kind you see in those influencer Instagram stories: spotless sneakers, a monogrammed jacket, and a phone that looked like it cost more than my laptop. The kid was scrolling through his phone, clearly bored, when the barista called out, "Cappuccino for Alex." The kid barely glanced up, then said, "That's not what I ordered." The barista replied politely, "Sorry, this is what you requested. A cappuccino with skim milk." "No, I wanted oat milk. I don't drink cow stuff." The kid snapped his fingers at his mom, who was busy on her phone. "Mom, this is wrong." The barista smiled and said, "I'm happy to remake it with oat milk." But Alex rolled his eyes so hard I was afraid they'd get stuck. "Whatever, just hurry up." As the barista remade the drink, Alex's voice rose just enough so the whole shop could hear. "What?" He started complaining about how everyone here is so slow, this place is way overrated, and how his dad's getting a new Tesla next week, and this place doesn't even have Wi-Fi. The tension was palpable, and I noticed a few regulars shooting uncomfortable glances toward the kid's table. And something unexpected happened. A man in his 50s, a regular who always sat near the window, calmly stood up and walked over. He smiled and said, "Hey Alex, my daughter works at a Tesla dealership. She says the real deal is in customer service, not just shiny cars." Alex looked confused. The man continued, "Maybe if you treated the people making your coffee with a little respect, you'd see what good service really means." There was a beat of silence. Alex's mom looked up, finally paying attention. The kid's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything back. The barista handed Alex the oat milk cappuccino with a fresh smile. "Here you go, Alex. Hope you enjoy it." Alex took a sip, paused, then muttered, "Thanks." The shop went back to its usual quiet hum. I walked out with my latte, feeling like I'd just witnessed a small but perfect moment of karma. Sometimes the best lessons come not with a bang, but with a quiet moment that leaves a lasting impression. And the final story I've got for you today is one of those. Back in high school, there was this one assembly everyone dreaded. You know? The kind where the principal stands on stage and drones on about attendance or dress code violations for like an hour. But one year, they decided to invite a motivational speaker to shake things up. Enter Jake. Not the same Jake from the babysitting story, but another guy from school, notorious for being a bit of a spoiled troublemaker. Jake was the kind of guy who'd show up to school in designer sneakers, expensive headphones, and always had a freshly manicured attitude to match. So, the motivational speaker starts talking about taking responsibility and owning your future, which is ironic considering Jake's reputation for blaming everyone else for his mistakes. Halfway through, Jake starts loudly whispering to his friend, throwing side eyes at the speaker. Then, right as the speaker says something about respecting authority, Jake loudly mutters, "Yeah, right." The speaker pauses, smiles, and says, "You know, Jake, sometimes the biggest lessons come from the people who think they already know everything." The entire gym goes quiet. Jake's face flushes red, but the speaker doesn't stop. In fact, he says, "It's the people who don't listen that miss out on the most important advice. But that's okay. The rest of us are here to learn." Jake sat back down, his mouth set in a tight line. The assembly ended shortly after, but the vibe in the school was different the next day. People kept talking about how the speaker didn't just motivate, he owned Jake in front of everyone without being rude. It was a reminder that sometimes the best owning isn't about yelling or embarrassing someone. It's about calmly calling out the behavior and letting the truth speak for itself. That's it for today's stories. If you enjoyed these, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video. And don't forget, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and which story hit you the hardest, or share your own. We might feature it in the next one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.